Alrighty. So 2 weeks ago we spoke about emotional martial arts, self-empowerment and self-defense through learning of emotional martial arts. And we went through the feelings of anger, the emotions of fear, the emotions of happiness, and we're now up to shame.
Yeah, big one.
So one thing I want to say about shame before I get started is shame has this seesaw with pride. They sort of sit on a very similar spectrum, sort of opposite to each other. And what I would say about shame is that the seesawing with pride is that sometimes we can be really proud about something, but that pride can be born from a space of shame. It can be born from a space of trapped shame. So for instance, if I had been shamed as a child for not understanding math, and I then subsequently became the best math person there possibly could be, very competitive, very highly driven, spending hours and hours and hours on math, and now then being very proud about it, there could be a wound there that is coming from a space of shame. And so the behaviors that we're doing and the decisions that we're making that we think are our passions could just be coming from pride and born of shame. And I've certainly seen so much of this in the business world, a lot of CEOs and leaders who are shamed, who may have been the middle child or the youngest child and sort of forced to live up to the elder one, bullied into a sense of meekness, and then rising back out of that to now, for instance, let's say shame of being in poverty, living in poverty with no money, now super driven to make a whole bunch of money, have all of these fancy cars, many houses, a really large net wealth, and now really proud of it, and selling all of these programs for how to become multimillionaires and multi-billionaires, etc., all born from this space of shame. And it becomes very hard to let go of that, because now all their success and all this status, even if they recognize that this place it was born from was from a place of shame, becomes really difficult to let go of, very difficult to surrender to. So we said, in terms of feeling, the martial stages, the first part was being able to feel it. The second part was about the body language, understanding the body language. The third part, which we're calling releasing and stretching, has an element of discernment around it. Is it healthy or unhealthy? Is it mine? Is it yours? And it's about expressing it, being able to tap into it and express it, or to be able to take it back into our hearts, which is the fourth step, which is the empathy. So I want you just to close your eyes. We're going to think about shame in a healthy way. And just remember a time when you hurt somebody, or you did something, a behavior, to which someone else was feeling really hurt. And just feel the shame transitioning into remorse. And also let's feel a more unhealthy shame, where someone is projecting shame towards you. They're telling you you're stupid, you're no good, you're not perfect, you can't do this, setting limitations to expressing who you are. And with this projected shame, you're now feeling hurt. And just imagine what your body language looks like, or what someone else's body language looks like when there's shame. Feel how perhaps the shoulders are a bit slumped, the head slumped. It's a bit watered down. Shame makes us feel smaller. And when our body frees itself of shame, perhaps we start to stand up for ourselves and say, no, stop projecting this shame towards me. You can see the body starts to grow a bit bigger, a bit larger. Your shoulders rise, your head lifts a bit. When you're ready, gently open your eyes. If you feel like sharing something, I see a lot of I go to the gym a lot, and I notice a lot of there's such a spectrum of shame at the gym. It ranges between shame and pride. This is just such an obvious spectrum of body language that I observe in the gym. And I see a lot of people sort of peacocking around, puffed chests, heads tilted up. And some people sort of ask me, what's the difference between someone just simply admiring, very neutrally, appreciating and finding gratitude for how they look in their body, versus someone who's perhaps doing that from a place of shame. And it's a very, very similar thing to, say, judgment, I would say, where the difference between what an observation is versus which is actually free of emotional projection, versus a judgment which has an emotional bomb attached to it. It's got a lot of projected shame. What's the difference? It's very difficult to tell just by looking at someone, because you could do a really amazing exercise, which is just simply looking in the mirror and finding gratitude, right, for yourself, for how you look, and just treating your body like a temple. So what's the difference between I'm spending 10 hours at the gym, this person must be really into themselves, they must be very arrogant or very attached to their body, versus someone who is also spending 10 hours at the gym and they're just appreciating and grateful for having a healthy, beautiful body, and really loving and treating it with kindness, treating their own body with kindness. And we tend to not know, until we do the next exercises, which is releasing the shame. So, when it comes to unhealthy shame, which is generally most of the shame that is all trapped within us, which is the shame that has been used as a form of discipline against us, that creates our mold, the mold to which we feel like we have to fit in. It's gifted, it's not gifted, it's sort of etched, painfully etched into our bodies by a shaming of our intelligence, shaming of our grades at school, shaming of our behaviors, not meeting certain responsibilities as a parent, as a child, not meeting certain forms of discipline and behaviors that were set standards at school. Shamed for how we sing, shamed for how we dance and move, shamed for our penis sizes, shamed for our breast sizes and our bum sizes and what we look like. All of these different ways of really essentially being mean to another person, we take on as being mean to ourselves. All very unhealthy, trapped shame. And so the way to release this unhealthiness, which often has a loop, so we're sort of scared of our shame. We're guilty of our shame. We're guilty of being ashamed, right? The only way we can get rid of this is through anger, fire. And what do I mean by that? It's imagining that someone is projecting shame towards you, saying you're overweight, not in terms of an observational aspect, right? It comes loaded with emotion. It's not just simply saying you're weighing 70 kilograms when perhaps the average weight is 60, that's neutral. It's saying you're fat. Oh, it's loaded with shame. It's loaded with disgust, and it's like, lose some weight. It's got a face that comes with it, right? It could even come through a text message or a Facebook message these days, and you can feel it coming through. And often the proclamation of defense from the person who's giving you the shame bomb through a text message is the defense is, oh, I'm just making an observational remark. This isn't judgment, right? The only thing we can do here to release this shame is to say stop with fire, with anger. Stop it. And those exercises that we did 2 weeks ago, which were about tapping into our fire again, and squeezing the belly and turning into stop, stomp, stop it. Now the thing that happened to us as children was we lost this ability to say no, to say stop, you're hurting me, to when this type of shame was projected towards us. It's often because we probably felt more safe and protected if we didn't say anything. So we have to learn to find our voice again to that. And the voices of all of these people, our parents, our teachers, our school, our friends, our society, who shamed us, forms the voice of our inner critic and our inner saboteur that's now telling us, oh, you're no good, oh, you're not going to be successful, blah, 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 blah. And what we often don't do is tell that voice to say, shut up, stop. Or perhaps we do it too meekly. But generally, we're like more agreeable to it. We're like, oh, yeah, you're right. Probably isn't going to work. Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm not good enough for that. Yeah, you're right. I need to take more courses in so and so before I'm actually ready. Oh yeah, you're right, because this person is a master at this and I'm not. Oh yeah, you're right, because this person has 10 years worth of experience and I'm just starting out. We let the excuses run in our mind, and often the excuses are powered by the shame, powered by the fear, powered by the disgust. And that's all very unhealthy. So the exercise there is to express the anger towards it. Any questions in that space?
Yeah, I have one question. I have my 3-year-old grandson who's taken on this very um, different kind of negative body response, which is when he doesn't get it his way, he throws his shoulders down and his head down, and he's like, "I don't like you," and then he walks out of the he walks out of the room. And I have tried and I have tried and I have tried to tell him to put your shoulders back, put your head back up, and you need to speak and tell me what's going on. You need to speak and tell me why you're upset. And then what will happen is the little lion in him will come turn around and rah, 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 rah. And it's okay, because then I know, okay, that's fine. At least he's upright. At least his shoulders are doing what they're supposed to. His head is doing what it's supposed to. And I know that he's almost mimicking or doing what his older 5-year-old sister is doing sometimes. But how would one go about correcting the body posture for a 3-year-old? And you don't want this to be this permanent thing where I'm going to throw my shoulders down and I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to walk out of a room. And I have spent 6 months trying to redo this. And I'm thinking, what is that like?
What's his parent?
The shame part of it, like why? Because he didn't get it his way.
Yeah. What's his parents doing? What do his parents do in response to not getting their way?
They just let him be.
As in for themselves. So, like, when his mother doesn't get her way, what does she do? What does the father do when he doesn't get his way?
They don't throw their shoulders down and throw their head down. That's for sure. Because I thought of that as well. And I know it came from the 5-year-old sister who's actually copying one of her older cousins.
Oh, okay.
So then I'm thinking to myself, well, how would one even correct that? And I don't know if you were able to answer it, because I don't know if it's on
we
subject.
we learn behaviors that we find work for us. So we as children, we're just observing everyone around us, right? And so we're learning a certain set of behaviors to tackle challenges that we find in our day-to-day. And so, when you share that story, the first thing that comes to mind is, I suppose, like this need for control as a little child, and perhaps not just the behavior, but the child needing to get their way all the time is like the child sort of needing to control things the way that he wants. What behaviors around control do the parents exhibit, and their response to that? Because what generally tends to happen is, if the parents want more control, and they have a certain way of interacting, the child will copy that need for control. But they probably either learn the same patterns of behavior around control with their parents, or they need to find themselves a new one to control the parents.
Okay.
It's a convoluted one, but I would simply say it's without really diving deeper into thought about it. it's, for me, it's less about looking at the emotion here, but more about looking at the need for control. And the feelings that a lack of control lead to. So when I don't have control, how am I feeling in that moment? So it sounds like he's feeling angry and he's going into passive aggression. And his passive aggression is, for me, I would maybe look less at the body language, but more at the withdrawal. So it's he's angry, he's hurting because he's lost control. So because he's lost control, perhaps he's feeling unsafe. So what happens when he loses control? Is he feeling unsafe? Is he feeling not seen? Is he feeling unheard? Is he feeling misunderstood? What was it that created that example? Like, can you give me something more specific of what?
So, for instance, he's got a younger cousin, my other son's little girl, who's 2. So he feels like he's the older brother. So you got a 2-year-old and 3-year-old, and there's a bit of a language barrier still because they're still learning the communication part of it. So when he gets frustrated, because one son is taught the little boy English, the other one's taught his little daughter Punjabi. So now there's the language barrier.
Yeah.
So the communication isn't working.
Yeah.
So he's meaning something and she's meaning something, and then what happens is they both become frustrated, but she's okay, she'll just walk away, but he feels he's the older one and she's not listening.
Right.
You see? And then it becomes this push-pull thing, because then the physical part of it starts to happen, and if I step in and say, you can't do that,
Yeah.
then we get this, throw the shoulders down, head down. Okay, I'm leaving, and I don't like you anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what do his parents do when their children sort of don't listen, and no matter what they do, they don't listen? What do they do? What do the parents do?
So again, it's more of sitting them down, talking to them if that's not going to help. Sometimes, which it doesn't help by sitting them down and talking to them. And then there are consequences. For instance, okay, you're going to go time out. You need to go sit in your room, just be by yourself. You need some space.
Right.
And I again, for me, I feel like nowadays the kids and the way you discipline kids is completely different.
Yeah.
So when I have someone who's a roaring little lion in the house, my form is, okay, I'm not going to deal with this right now. I'm going to take them outside and just give them some fresh air in the backyard, run around, burn it off. Now can we talk about it?
Yeah.
Parents are different, because parents don't have that ability sometimes. They're like doing 10 other things.
Yeah. It sounds like he's time-outing himself. So when he's not getting his way, because he's generally been, like, all well and good if the parents are able to talk to him, but it's not what happens when they're successful in the control. It's what happens when they're unsuccessful in the control. So he doesn't have the language of the parents. He also can't tell his cousin to go out of the room and time out. So he just times out himself.
Okay,
right? Because he's been taught that the way I deal with anger, if I'm unable to express it and I'm frustrated and I'm feeling angry, I need to go and time out. So he's been taught it all around by a lot of different people. And so in those moments where he's being frustrated by his cousin, no matter what it is, that same energy is like, okay, what do I do with this energy? I have to time out. So it can be a bit confusing for him to suddenly be like, okay, come out of time out and talk. It can.
And it's really interesting, because sometimes, how, I don't know how to kind of explain this, but you know how like a cat or a dog will get up and shake, 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 shake?
Yes.
Sometimes I see these little ones, they're like shaking,
Yeah.
like they shake.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. Mine didn't shake.
Yeah.
What's all this about?
Yeah, which is a fantastic way of actually getting all of this energy out of our body. You know, the anger and fire has this wanting to move something. It has this wanting to take action, right? Like it's the only emotion really that has us actually taking action. All of the other ones have us feeling something, right? And perhaps lead us to action, can lead us to action. But it leads us really to a place of, well, often it leads us to a place of anger, to which actually we use to take action. So we're running away from a dangerous situation, we're setting boundaries and saying, no, this is poisonous for me, toxic, and so get away from me, or I'm leaving this situation, you know, that kind of thing. So I mean, that's probably my read on it. In terms of like addressing it for like as a child, it's got to be that release. The anger has to kind of come out, and I believe we can teach children how to conscious rant. I believe we can tell children how they already do it. They already are shouting, screaming, stomping their feet when they're angry. We just don't like that, and we want to control that, or we're seen as bad parents, or seen as undisciplining parents. And there's a lot of shame that's put around that, this natural behavior as a child. It's very difficult to talk to them, right? I mean, we can start to help them with language, etc., but these capacities, these mental capacities don't really set in fully, I believe, till we're past the age of 27. We're really learning all the way up until then. I mean, I think that up until the age of 7, we're really quite immature, but up to the age of 14, we're starting to find ourselves more. Sexual maturity discovery doesn't really happen till, you know, between 14 to 21. And really, for me, I think it's when the relationships between 21 to 27 sort of define more, all of that combined into how we're navigating all of this stuff. I don't think we actually reached a proper level of maturity till at least, I say proper, a well-developed set of maturities until we're 27. And I think we can see this through a lot of the different masters that have come through, either from our religious spaces or non-religious, where we then teachers sort of seem to come out around their 30s, at very, very early, like very enlightened teachers come out at their 30s and significantly much later.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head when, you know, he's trying to express the best that he can. And anger is very, very powerful, and it is very difficult to handle when you are not able to express it somehow.
Yeah. And so much of it is, like I said, the core of it is around control. How do the parents respond when they don't have control of a situation? What are they doing? How is there even a need for control? Often we're especially in the Western world, more focused on the outcomes, right? And controlling our way to the outcomes, rather than simply just setting a vision, putting it out there, and then letting it all go. It doesn't make so much sense to be doing that, whether it's in a personal scenario or in a business sense, right? If the people feel...
And the surrender versus the embrace.
Yeah.
Can you touch on that a little bit?
So when we... There's a sort of seesawing act between surrendering to something versus embracing something. And I liken it again to the waves. Let's say that let's say we come into some kind of danger for ourselves, right? And let's say it's not actually a healthy danger. Let's say it's something like my bank account is running really low and I'm feeling scared that I'm going to run out of money. I could say healthy or unhealthy. It sort of depends. The non-empathetic way of dealing with that would be to ride that wave of fear all the way down, and then correspondingly ride the wave of greed going all the way back up. And that's, in a way, the seesaw. We sort of go down this, kind of depressive sort of cycle going, oh my, down, 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 and it takes us really down. And then we're slowly taken back up this cycle as well. And we're perhaps wanting to like, oh, this pyramid scheme sounds really amazing. Or the stock market is going up. Let's get in on the action. Or the property market is getting up in on the action. And we ride this wave of greed, this fear of missing out. And it's still a fear. And then all of a sudden everything busts and comes back down. The stock market is a really good example of that. But with empathy is this surrender versus embrace. So we find the fear coming to the surface. We allow ourselves to dive deeper into it. And in a way, we're surrendering to that emotion that is arising. And when we're truly intimate with that emotion, we exercise some level of discernment. We're able to exercise the discernment because the fear has something to tell us. It's saying, okay, perhaps there is a relevance in this fear coming up. If my bank account runs out, I'm literally on the streets. So I need to take some action here and do something. Either reach out to someone, blah, blah, blah. Which is leading us to action, right? We're doing something. We're not just riding in all that wave. We're action orientated, which is pulling into the anger, into the fire. Then it enables us to ride the up wave, which is the embrace. We're embracing that the fear had something to tell us. We took action, and we're embracing that this feeling of ours in the form of action, and we're coming back down. And it often ends to a place of true release. We're releasing that. We're healing what came to us as a core wound. So it's a very different tussle that is surrender versus embrace. And I think next week we'll go through a whole bunch of slides that I have around surrender, embrace, all of these different waves that I'll leave for next week.
Perfect.
Or the next session, whenever the next session is. Okay. Let's get on to healthy shame. So we're still on the release and stretch section. Healthy shame means we have hurt someone and we're feeling their hurt and we're feeling ashamed for that. And we kind of did this exercise a bit earlier, which was just simply feeling into this deep sense of shame. That at the tail end of it, when we're truly felt into that hurt, leads to remorse. We're actually feeling sorry. We're not just saying sorry. Sorry is not just the word. But I'm feeling remorseful. And as a consequence, there's an action that's there too. That potentially is, I'm going to change my behaviors. I'm going to ask for forgiveness. I'm going to forgive myself. All of these different actions that can come out of remorse. But so often we stop ourselves short of feeling the depth of shame. So, like a lot of the movement now in America of Black Lives Matter, yeah, there is a large movement of people that are towards embracing, peoples of all colors and peoples of African American origin, but where I sense that we're falling short in these movements is that for me it is not enough just simply to post a picture of a black box on Instagram and call it a day. I've dealt with my shame. It's not enough. We sort of we tend to think that we've nipped it in the bud by writing out an apology or writing out, I support this movement, I blah, 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 blah. But in actual fact, there is a real depth here, not just of that type of shame, but of all shames of all of our divisiveness. Whether it was because we bullied someone or we were silent when someone else was being bullied, for no matter what, there is a depth of shame that is actually trapped in our bodies, to which when we truly allow ourselves to become intimate with that, leads to remorse. And when the feeling of remorse is there, the question is then, is there even a need for extra punishment? Is there even a need to do more when someone is feeling a deep sense of remorse? My sense of it is remorse as an energy is so painful that, and especially remorse in loop, if we are in remorse and guilt in loop, it can create a very dangerous situation, which I sense leads to a lot of suicides. We feel so deeply remorseful for something we've done. We can't seem to pull ourselves out of the loop, and we're feeling so guilty and remorseful. Guilt plus remorse is a very potent combination that often leads to suicide, especially when it's in a loop, is my sense of it. And so remorse is a very powerful energy, and we often find ourselves asking why our parents were unable to be remorseful for things that they did that they hurt us with. Why was society or blah 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 unable to feel remorse or say sorry? What's the difficulty in saying sorry? It's not so much the difficulty in saying sorry, I would suspect, but it's the difficulty in really feeling sorry. But that feeling of remorse leads to such deeper relationships with ourselves and with our fellow human. It's what.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think there is a huge release of energy when someone is genuinely remorseful for their actions.
Yeah.
And I think the planet needs it.
Yeah, totally.
As a whole.
Yes. Yeah.
Because to say sorry can be very empty.
Very, very empty when it comes devoid of the feeling.
Yeah. Because it's almost very, people use sorry and thank you in such a way that it's meaningless. When it comes out of sincerity, then you truly feel it.
Yes.
And I think we teach our children from a very young age, I think, to know, what do you say? You say thank you. What do you say? I'm sorry. But are you really sorry?
Right.
Are you really thankful?
Right.
I think if we start right from when they're little to allow them to understand, then the words wouldn't be so empty.
Yes. And my sense is that there is also this seesaw between remorse and gratitude. they're sort of, for me, also on a very similar spectrum. We feel more grateful when we're able to feel more sorry. When we're able to feel more grateful, we're also able to feel more sorry. It's just this very, I would say, like, humbling emotion. And it's a very interconnected emotion. It's what really binds us to other humans. Because if I'm able, that's the only emotion I think that binds us to another human's pain. Binds us, interconnects us with another human's pain and pleasure. So pain and pleasure also being on a spectrum with each other. The more pain we're able to feel, the more pleasure we're able to feel. So they're all very interesting spectrums that, my sense is if we start to say to children not to say thank you or to say sorry, but to feel deeper shame, it just automatically leads there. If we nip it in the bud before the end, if we sort of nip the shame away and sort of distract ourselves from it, before we fully allow it to engulf our bodies, we fall short of remorse.
So you know what this is? This is a whole new podcast show with Chris. The pain and the pleasure, the thank you and the sorry.
Yeah.
It truly is, because, there's a real heartfelt way of saying all of that.
Yes.
And it starts at a young age, so a parent needs to start at that age.
Yeah. The parent really actually needs to just do it for themselves first. When the parent can lead by example, the child doesn't even need to be taught.
Yes.
It has to be embodied. And the key to this is, I have to come back to, sometimes people can go down this really, what they think is a deep spiral of shame, and they think that they're in this deep spiral of remorse, and it's very scary to the places, the really, really dark places it takes us to, of regret. But you see an energy of remorse that's often confused with the energy of regret. The energy of regret is actually, it's in loop. It's got what I mean by that, it's something happened in the past. We're stuck on this moment in the past. We can't seem to let go of it. And we're feeling this endless remorse and shame. And we're reliving it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And we can't seem to dig ourselves out of it. It's not that the shame or the remorse is something to be avoided entirely. It's that we created a loop around it. We kept feeling guilty for the same thing over and over again. And this is the importance of, perhaps I can't stress enough the importance of the empathy around this, the kulike, or whatever heart-centered emotion it is, to be able to bring all those moments to recognize, firstly, we're in a loop. I'm in a loop now. I'm feeling guilty for the same thing over and over and over again. We have to bring it back to the heart. So we feel this deep, 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 deep remorse for this, whatever it is that we did, and this deep regret. We have to be okay, firstly, with feeling that, with living to the depths of that. Then we have to eventually find a way to bring that pain into our heart. There is almost a reluctance for us to want to do that. And we seem to find ourselves spending a lot of time mentally thinking about it and processing it and processing and processing it. And sometimes what we find releases us are addictions from that remorse, of addictions of drugs. Why? What led us there? Because we felt that this drug was able to numb us from the pain of remorse, from the pain of guilt, from the pain of shame. And that's the only way we could deal with it, was to numb ourselves with alcohol, numb ourselves with the drugs, whatever drug it was. And we find ourselves in an addiction, in an addictive loop of some kind. And so, and the unfortunate thing also is, I guess, not unfortunate, psychiatrists, people who have these loops, go and see the psychiatrist, then they enter into this, into the world of psychiatric drugs, and they can never really escape from that. And the other issue with that is also, the moment they do, they'll come into a relapse. And so it becomes this very slippery slide down that road. That for me, my sense is that we can empower ourselves a lot earlier than letting it take us to those depths, by simply acknowledging the power of the heart first. Once we have a really good practice of being able to cement ourselves in the heart, then we're able to face the emotion, the unpleasantness, and the density of the pain and the emotion that's arising with much more skill, with much more artistry.
But aren't those particular emotions that the alcoholic or the addicted individual, aren't those the lower center energies? Like, most of them are so afraid to get to the heart center because they're so still in survival mode, trying to deal with all that childhood trauma. So they're trapped down there. They're not able to move into the heart anyways. And if they do move to that area, it's not like it's going to be open. It'll be doors shut because it's a survival mechanism.
It's,
like I don't quite.
There are specific techniques, and like a lot of people now are doing like experimental therapies with ketamine, MDMA, different plant medicines like Huachuma, San Pedro, ayahuasca, peyote, with the help of a therapist. And what do all of those substances have in common, these plants or these chemicals, is an ability to sort of bypass all those conditions and those coping mechanisms and bring us straight to the heart. I mean, heart meditation in itself, when done properly, effectively, can instantly also take us to the heart. There can be some difficulty in getting there initially, but with enough practice and with the right guidance, it can also be done. However, staying there is a different story. So whilst those states can be achieved temporarily, and it's really important to achieve those states temporarily, because we reach that frequency, that heart-centered frequency at that one instant. It might be that 10 minutes when you're deep in meditation, only 10 minutes or 1 minute, and that was the only time you're able to be there. And then you're back in remorse, or you're back in shame, or you're back in fear, and all of those loops. Yeah, it could be that you're doing MDMA therapy, and it's for the 3 hours that you have that, or whatever it is, ketamine, or 1 hour, whatever it is that allowed you to be in that space for the briefest of times, can help set a different perspective on it. It can help us shift this mindset of ours that the mind wanted to hold on to a point in the past. The mind seems to not want to let go of it because it's also powered by the emotion. So it's the brain combined with the gut, devout of the heart, that's sort of powering us there. So
as a child, sorry for interrupting, but as a child, the very first thing that the fetus has is a heartbeat.
Yes.
The very second thing is the gut, right?
I think the second thing is the tongue.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the tongue, which is connected to the heart.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the heart, but if we're looking at the body, right? So before the mind is the gut.
I think so, yeah. It can baby can feel more than it can think.
Yes. And so I'm looking at it from, if you look at an individual who's trying to, I mean, you're disempowered, you're leaking from the lower centers. I guess the solar plex would be something that the addicted personality types are probably dealing with, right? Or would be all three lower centers is where the issues are.
It can be everything. It can really be everything. I mean, I would go so far as even saying disease in the body is an addiction.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's as far as I
a
would,
negative addiction to harm themselves.
at a very subconscious level. But for me, and this is approaching onto topics that perhaps some people might consider more esoteric. For me, disease is it's an emotional loop that we can't seem to pull ourselves out of. It's like a fear on a fear. It's a fear, and we can't seem to surrender to it. We can't seem to break out of it, and it creates an energetic blockage, because it's emotions that are trapped in the body. It creates this energetic blockage, to which is like a dam wall in our body. You think about a dam. What does a dam do? It stops water from flowing, right? What happens when you stop water from flowing is it starts to build energy in one particular place. So our body and our DNA is such a sensitive, finely tuned and complex machinery. What happens when we change the energy flow and the balance of a certain part of our body, whether it's through radiation, microwave, or whatever it is? But we're talking quite deliberately in one part of the body. We know through a lot of work, scientific work done by Dr. Emoto on water, and other scientists who have done studies on water, that water structures change significantly when subjected to different emotions. So imagine you have a certain type of emotion that's trapped in the body. Our bodies are 80-ish% made of water. That water has changed structure in that certain place, and so what that's creating is dis-ease in one part of our body. Then the real difficulty there, so there we have an addiction to wanting to hold on to that again and again and again. And the universe is probably showing us many different ways to release out of it. But we're just hell-bent on holding on to that. And now what happens is we not only have an emotional loop that was that prolonged that it's created dis-ease and physical symptoms in our body, but we now are scared of the dis-ease. We're scared of Crohn's, scared of Lyme's, ashamed of eczema, scared of dying from cancer, scared of whatever it is, heart disease. So we have created a three-part loop, and a three-part emotional loop. We have fear on disease, which is fear on fear on fear. So now we've just made it so much more difficult to come out of that loop. And how difficult is it now to find the surrender and to find the embrace in that side of things? It becomes near impossible. And instead, we're also then taking a lot of medications and drugs to address the dis-ease, which further can numb us to whatever it is. Or we want to cut it out of our bodies. And we're wanting to wish it away. We're not wanting to surrender and embrace it, because it doesn't make sense to the mind. And telling someone, just surrender and embrace your dis-ease, even if it's like a life-threatening one, cancer, Crohn's, you're in hospital, just surrender and embrace it. It does not make any sense to the mind. But if we do not do that, we can't unpack that layer of emotional loopage. So it's like that movie Inception. if where you're in dream within a dream within a dream. This is an emotion within an emotion within an emotion. We can't get to the core of what's triggering is at the core of our emotions without first addressing the outer layer. And now we've already got a physical symptom. It's so much more difficult to actually let go, release the fear around that. And I suspect that a lot of people that have naturally cured themselves of disease fully, not managing it, but fully cured, did all come to a space of surrender and embrace with the disease, to finally come to the core of why it came about in the first place.
May I ask you about false templates at this point?
Templates of?
Okay, so there's this thought out there that's floating around that people have like a virus attacks your body, and what happens is the virus replicates another healthy cell, but it's actually just a little bit off, and then of course that's how dis-ease kind of spreads, right? And so the cells accept it, and then they realize, okay, we're being taken over, right? But energetically, we have our mental, emotional, auric fields around us. The dis-ease actually happens out there somewhere first before they end up in the physical, right?
Yep.
So whatever it is that has been created, and people refer to it as a false template of some sort, that's kind of looping, as you're saying, it loops. It's very similar, but it could be just a little bit off, kind of like a virus, but it's created in the field, and then it comes into your physical field.
Yep. Now,
is there a way that you would approach it in the outer lying fields, your emotional, mental, auric field out there before it hits your, like, is there some form of practice? Because I understand you're saying embrace it and surrender to it and embrace it once it's in the physical. But what about those false templates that are floating around in your field before it comes into your physical body?
I would say that there is our human body really has been created as the perfect healthy template. My belief is that our being, our soul, our spirit, attracts it's like a magnetic attraction. All of the lessons it needs to learn to be able to embody pure love and to become closer, like not just closer, but just become godlike divinity, magnificence in the form of a human body. And this law of attraction does not exclude disease, parasites, whatever external falsities, false light, false templates, false man-made viruses, man-made whatever, less like natural viruses, natural bacteria, man-made bacteria, whatever that even word means, man-made or natural. We attract it because it is our lesson, whether it is one that we are very aware of what the lesson is of this lifetime, or one that we have had to learn through many, what were we doing before here, through our many previous incarnations. And this, we as a collective, we attract this as both a collective, and we attract this individually. And so to me, I don't care so much about the mechanics of whether it's man-made or not. I mean, you think about like an offshore species, what we would call, like, let's say aliens, whether they exist or don't exist. I mean, let's say they looked at Earth. It's fresh. They don't know what they just arrived. They're explorers and they arrived. They don't differentiate between what's man-made and what's not man-made, what's natural and what's organic or inorganic. They're just like, humans are like, I just see them as like other animals or moving mammals or whatever it might be. They look at all different types of parasites and bacteria. It's also part of almost like the fungal community and the plant kingdoms. It's just a separate community. They don't distinguish between it's man-made, what intention was set, what agendas were done between that. Or the structures of our houses to our trees. Like, what's the difference between an anthill, something built by termites, a natural bee's hive, to a house or a car? They would look at it as this is all the same. This is just simply the structure that the human does, and this is the structure that the ant does. There's no sort of differentiating aspect that they would make. And this is a very Taoist concept, but the Eastern world adopts this a lot more than the Western world. The Western world feels that they have this need to distinguish between, say, technology and nature, or humans versus animals. Like, there is this divisiveness that's natural within our conceptualization as a culture. But when we can see it as a more as a whole, like, I'm just simply attracting what lessons I need for me right now. My sense is that if we are truly emotionally healthy, we have a tap into a vast variety of our emotional and feeling-centered spectrum. We're very aligned in our whole bodies. That we actually embody this godlike divine energy of magnificence. We just embody love. We embody and we shine. We shine as these magnificent beings. This is what the natural human template should always have been, and it is. It's often in a lot of children. We just lost it all. And all the stuff that's happening around the world right now with disease and all of this, it's always existed. It's always been here through time. But we felt as humans, our science and our biology is quite dead and segregated has sort of segregated itself from the spiritual and also from the energetic. And so it's sort of studying it's compartmentalizing these studies of viral organisms or parasites and sort of studying them quite individualistically, very compartmentalized, without any relationship to the whole. And when we do that, we lose the whole picture. We lose a massive part of the picture, which is that it's losing the analytics between the interconnectedness of all beings, the sentience of everything, even the sentience within parasites and the sentience within viruses. It has a sentience. They all have a sentience. I truly believe. Every single cell and molecule in this entire universe, or the void itself, the space between atoms, has a sentience, a consciousness that we have lost touch with. And all of this is trying to actually show us back to, it's, you know, for me, it's like trying to shine the light on how far we've gotten from it. But humans seem to find the need to just dive deeper and deeper and deeper into the compartmentalization of analyzing each thing that it throws at us. So if you talk about these viruses, these what you're calling like these false templates of mutating cells, of deception within cells. The deception within cells is literally like the deception that happens amongst humans. And even at a broader scale, it's like the deceptions that the flowers do to bees. The flowers pretending that they're all beautiful and making the bees work for them. The flowers are kind of deceptive too. It's sort of replicating this deception. And so, you know, we find a need as humans to want to punish or squash anything we don't like. We're like, oh, that's unhealthy for us. I need to squash it out of my life. I need to stomp it out. Rather than surrendering and embracing. And my sense is that when we can actually truly find a space of surrendering and embracing, those things will just naturally go their own way, perhaps disappear. Just like disease leaves the body.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine, and she had a terminal illness, and the doctors couldn't quite assess what she had for quite some time. So I had one of the people that I, kind of follow off and on during certain, seminars and things. He suggested to her, he said, don't look at it as something you have. Look at it as something you may have. There's a huge difference.
Yep.
The may have allows for you to work with it. It gives you some space between you have it, be it cancer, let's say. You have symptoms of something doesn't mean you have that particular dis-ease. So when you're looking at anything, it's easier to work with something you may have or you have symptoms of, but don't realistically have. There's something that happens internally.
Yeah, there's a bit of a mindset flip. Like, there's a lot of experiments that they did in the 1920s and all of this of telling people that they were gravely ill and they were going to die the next day, when, or like just accidents of misdiagnoses, and the person literally dies the next day. They get super sullen and they die within 2 days. And then they're like, oh, oops, we just misdiagnosed you. Like, we know the power of belief and the power of, we sort of shame placebo, but placebo is real. Like that power of belief is not necessarily something I would say to be shamed. Just because a drug doesn't work because it was tested against a placebo and people are taking a placebo and getting healed, they're taking a sugar tablet and getting healed. The drug companies want to shame the placebo, but that just shows you how powerful placebo is, right? What if we could use placebo to our benefit rather than shaming it? And this kind of, I feel, approaches onto that subject. I would probably take it one step further than the doctor and say, where I've found with my clients and my experience with those dealing with diseases is actually, my suggestion is to form a deeper relationship with disease. Like, call it a name it something. Like, sometimes the risk I find in not acknowledging that something is there or may not have the symptoms is we can go numb to what is beneath it. And I've seen, for instance, like people with work with people with cancer who are very reluctant to dive into fears, and they don't want to acknowledge that they have cancer. Like they're just, oh, I may have it, like that same kind of mindset. And I found them more likely to distance themselves from the core emotion of fear. So they're more likely to run away from that and disassociate rather than become intimate with it. So my approach is actually like, let's start to form a new relationship with this. Call it a name, I don't care. It doesn't have to be the name of what mainstream is calling or doctors are calling the disease. Call it a name. Just like you would call your inner critic a name. Like, so-and-so is here. So-and-so is here. And every time, like, the inner critic shows up and it's giving us symptoms like butterflies in the stomach, or my shoulders are down and I'm sullen because I'm ashamed of something. It's the same thing with disease. It's like physical pain shows up in a part of my body, or something's broken out and, you know, it's not, let's say, healthy. I see it. I notice you. And what's the name? I call you blah, blah, blah. I see you. And then work on that relationship with that. Because beneath that will be a core, most likely, of really trapped emotions and emotional loops. It's a slightly different approach than what most people would do in creating a relationship. Like, let's say you have I don't know, Crohn's disease or Lyme's. It's like, oh, I'm noticing the symptoms coming up. Hi, how are you? I see you. I hear you. What are you trying to tell me today? And people are reluctant to have this relationship because they're like, I don't want to dive deeper into the pain. What do you mean I've had to experience all this pain? I've already done it again and again and again every single day of my life when I was born with this. What do you mean? It doesn't make sense. And that's why it's very hard to accept, because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's a little bit backwards, I guess. It's kind of like, you know, you can't, you know, the old, you can't give something you don't have, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you're looking for love, but you can't get it because you don't have it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's that.
It's a catch-22.
A lot of things, right? So,
yeah.
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 Yeah, I was just, you know, I could see a lot of that. You know, I was watching, I don't know, watching Tony Robbins and that boxer guy. What's his name? Anyway, the one who bit the ear off, whatever that guy.
Oh, Evander.
Who?
Mike Tyson.
That's right. You get a chance, watch their little YouTube.
Okay.
It's quite interesting when you watch that because, you know, their conversation, first, I guess, Tony went to Tyson's studio, gave an interview, then Tyson ended up on Tony's podcast and gave an interview. And I watched both of them and I'm just like, wow, you know, I'm so fascinated, right? These so-called, you know, accomplished individuals in whatever fields that they're in, and yet when you take away all that exterior stuff, they're still they're doing the work. They're going through the emotions. They're digging deep, and they're looking at, you know, how do I handle this still in my life, right? Yeah. And it's still childhood traumas. You know, and stuff, and it's really, really fascinating. So if either of you get a chance, do take a look at them. I was really, really blown away. I thought, wow, And then I learned all sorts of things about what these people are doing with money. They go, they go and smoke frogs or something. I'm like, whoa, this is really bizarre. But yeah, so it's pretty good because it's all about emotions. It's all about traumas. It's all about childhood and crap that they're still dealing with. But somehow they were able to navigate life, and still they're looking for fulfillment in so many ways, and bless them for what they do because they help the masses as well, right?
Yeah. And success looks very different to someone who really embodies this divine magnificence.
Yeah.
Yeah. The challenges look very different. The struggles look very different. And, I know Buddha says, and so many people say, suffering, suffering, suffering. Wealth and success in the mainstream way we know, it does not help us escape suffering. And this work is the mummy and daddy work. This truly is the way of becoming magnificent. That divine magnificence shines through. It's not that you'll not have money or not have this or be in lack. No, when we have all of that, it all comes all the same. Nothing's shamed, nothing. We're not scared of anything, and we have such healthy, amazing bodies. I really believe that humans were made in the image of the gods, of God, of Prime Creator. And when I say image and likeness, I truly mean everything, including the feeling space, the vast feeling space we have as humans versus, let's say, the skin suit of an animal or the skin suit of a tree. We have such a broad spectrum of feelings that, I guess we're not really even doing it justice by breaking it down just into 7 emotions, but we got to start somewhere, right? It's like, we have a 26-letter alphabet when maybe it should be a 1 billion-letter alphabet to really describe everything properly. If there is such a thing, we have 26 letters of the alphabet. We already diluted that. We have English, which is probably less complicated than a language like Sumerian or Chinese. It's like we've dumbed everything down, but we got to start somewhere. And this is like where we're starting. We're slowly opening back up. This is what I say to opening into the intelligence of the emotions and opening into the intelligence of our feelings. Slowly but surely.
It's interesting you made that comment about the alphabet and how limited they are, but as you were speaking before, believe it or not, what crossed my mind is, the vibration of the sounds that you're making carries far more information than you and I can ever analyze.
Absolutely.
And I picked up on that.
Yep.
I picked up on the vibrations that you're carrying.
Yep.
And so it's interesting that you brought up the fact that the language and the alphabet is limiting you. But in actual fact, if you know that each of us carries a very different and unique vibration and very complex, doesn't matter what you're saying, Chris, the sounds you're making, it's carrying that information.
That's exactly right.
Funny, you should just bring that up just as I had those thoughts. So thank you.
I've been finding this actually very recently is just this. It's like it, like my wife and I, every day we'll have at least 10 moments where I'll say something and she's like, oh, I was just thinking that. At least 10. And other people also. I think that's the space we're going into right now. You know, it is this interconnectedness of thought patterns. It is very much, it's we're navigating into this unknown territory, unknown to the Western world, right?
No, your codes are very, very clear.
Yeah.
The codes that you're speaking are very clear.
Yeah.
As much as you think that you're limited, you're beyond that.
Yeah, I did find after every massive transformational experience I had, like whether it was whichever dark room or whatever plant medicine journeys or deep dives into the shadows that I did, that my language, it was as though I had to take at least a 2-week break to find words. I would find myself stuttering at the beginning. It was as though I couldn't speak, and everything I was saying sounded just not true. And so, you know, like, it happened late last year. There's at least 4 months to which I could barely put together a sentence. It was like 3 words, and I would just stop, and I'd just be like, no. And again, this year too, like about 2 months worth of just stuttering. And even some of the earlier EI sessions that I was doing, I was still coming out of that phase of like only being able to speak a couple of words and going, yeah, no, not quite right. There is definitely something about the translation, like the encoding within the words that is that we speak and read. Yeah. It brings me back to my very first job, as I was working in IT in my 20s, and I was a internet help desk person, and this is back in '99, where, you know, internet computers was still very, very niche. And I was helping people with their computers, and we had to take logs, so I know exactly how many people I spoke to. I spoke to like over 35,000 people, just over the phone within a 5-year span, and helping all of these people with their internet problems. And I realized later on what this experience had taught me was I could sort of like remote view what these people were seeing in their houses or their screens. I could tune into the kind of person that they were just by how they were expressing themselves through their voice. I could pick up all different types of things that would change my interaction towards them. And I look back at it more these days and go, wow, that was a very enlightening experience for me. But I think that was one of the first deep experiences into really figuring out how to communicate using this language, but beyond the language, to help someone move their mouse where it was supposed to move, you know, like to almost telepathically guide someone, and to receive that information through voice or through the interconnectedness of us all. So yeah,
that's kind of where we're at right now, is that it's beyond what you're communicating.
Totally.
The codes are being read as well, just so that you know.
Yeah. And this is why I also very much promoted in the first couple of sessions this need to reflect on the polarity of our language, the duality of our language, the types of words we choose to use, whether we want to delete words from our vocabulary, whether we want to introduce new ones, bring new words in. Because that also creates this mindset of separation and divisiveness the moment we say a word, either good or bad, instantly there is this energetic field that creates divisiveness and separation. We don't really think about that, right? The reflection of it, when we can start to choose different words to associate with, like not good or bad, better, worse, improved, all of these different words that have polarity, and instead to delete them and replace them with contrast, contrast, but more of the middle ground. It starts to shift us as humans, and our energy starts to shift. And I wouldn't say like I'm a wordsmith by any means, and like there are people who have dissected and broken down the English language to the finest and finest of details, all the way back to its origins and what it truly should have meant. That stuff doesn't really interest me so much. It's not really my thing, but certainly expressing my truth in the most accurate way, the most reflective way is.
Yeah, it's very interesting that we have that conversation, but yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. How are you doing?
Be checking out of here.
Alrighty.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't talk much.
It's okay.
It's like 100 degrees where I'm at right now. I'm just like, but I enjoyed listening to both of you. Yeah, I can relate a lot.
How was your decoding?
Yeah, what came for me is I've been studying Qigong and martial arts and where I'm at, and embodying, before even words come out of my mouth, it's embodying what you're saying. Like, to move, like the teacher that I'm studying with is a transgender woman, woman. And she instills in us who are teaching these Qigong to embody it, so that the transmission is coming from the teacher. And that's what I'm getting at all this, is the words, the rational thinking, and yeah, so that's a
Gibberish is really good, Don.
What's that?
Gibberish is really good.
What's that?
When you get out of your rational mind, that's something new that I've learned, because the kids were doing it too much, right? They're la 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 la. What the heck is going on?
Yeah.
But gibberish is getting out of that rational mind, right?
Yeah.
And using this area, which is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So once in a while, just blah, 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 blah.
Yes. Yeah, we come back to our innocence of who we are as children. I mean, that's one of the poses, is innocence. It's beseeching, and that's the gibberish part. So
yeah, that's beautiful.
Oh, thank you both. I'm gonna go.
Alrighty. Enjoy the coolness. All right.
Yes.
Ciao, ciao.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.